The air in the training hall was thick with the smell of ozone and sweat. This was the Astral Naval Academy on Mars. Beings from many different star systems trained here to become officers. There were tall reptilian Tarkaxians with their scaly skin and deep voices. There were slender insect-like Volar, who could process information faster than any computer. And there were humans, the newest members of the galactic community. Among the humans was a young woman named Ji-hee. She was small, even for a human. She stood in a corner of the busy hall away from the main groups. While other cadets practiced with glowing plasma rifles or heavy sonic cannons, Ji-hee was doing something else. She was carefully polishing a set of knives. They were not energy weapons. They were not made of advanced alloys. They were simple, old-fashioned knives made of forged steel. The handles were worn smooth from use. The blades caught the light in a dull gray gleam. To everyone else, they looked like museum pieces. Useless, Cadet Ji-hee. The voice was sharp and tired. It belonged to Instructor Park, a man with a stern face and a posture as rigid as metal. He walked toward her, his boots clicking on the polished floor. The other cadets nearby stopped their training to watch. They enjoyed seeing Ji-hee get into trouble. It happened often. Park stopped in front of her. He looked down at the knives in her hands, then back at her face. His expression was one of deep disappointment. "Again," he said, his voice low. "You are wasting your time with these things. This is the Astral Academy, not a history show. You need to master the plasma rifle. You need to understand tactical grenades. What will you do with those knives against a Tarkaxian warrior? Give him a shave?" A few of the other cadets laughed. One of them, a strong and confident human cadet named Min-Soo, laughed the loudest. Min-Soo was everything the Academy wanted. He was big, fast, and excellent with every standard weapon. Ji-hee did not look up. She continued to run her cloth over the blade. "Sir, I am maintaining my equipment." "That is not equipment, Cadet," Park said, his patience clearly gone. "That is a hobby, and your hobby is making you fail. Your scores in close quarters combat are the lowest in your class. You are slow. You are weak. You rely on ideas that are hundreds of years out of date. If you cannot pass the basic drills, you will be sent back to Earth. Is that what you want?" Finally, Ji-hee looked up. Her eyes were calm and dark. "No, sir." "Then put those away and get on the firing line now." Ji-hee carefully placed the knives back into their case. She walked to the line where other cadets were firing at holographic targets. She picked up a plasma rifle. It was heavy and warm in her hands. She aimed at the hologram of a Tarkaxian soldier. She fired. The bolt of energy went wide, missing the target completely. Min-Soo, who was standing next to her, hit his target dead in the center. He smirked. "Maybe you should try throwing one of your knives, Ji-hee. You might have better luck." Ji-hee ignored him. She fired again. This time the shot hit the edge of the target's shoulder. It was not a good hit. It was not a disabling hit. Instructor Park watched from behind them and shook his head. He made a note on his datapad. Another failing mark for Ji-hee. Later that day, the cadets were in the simulation chamber. This was a big, round room where holographic battlefields could be created. Today's test was a squad-based mission. The goal was to capture a flag from a simulated Tarkaxian outpost. Ji-hee was on Min-Soo's team. No one was happy about it. "Just stay out of the way," Min-Soo told her as the simulation started. The room changed. Now they were in a rocky red canyon. In the distance, they could see the Tarkaxian base. "We'll handle the fighting. You can be the lookout." Ji-hee just nodded. She held her plasma rifle awkwardly. The team moved forward. They used the rocks for cover. Suddenly, holographic Tarkaxian soldiers appeared. They were big and strong. Their armor was thick. Energy bolts filled the air. "Open fire," Min-Soo yelled. The human cadets fired their weapons. The Tarkaxian holograms fired back. One of the human cadets was hit, and his suit vibrated, signaling he was out of the exercise. Ji-hee tried to fire, but she was slow. A Tarkaxian charged at her. She stumbled backward and fell. The Tarkaxian raised its weapon. Before it could fire, Min-Soo shot it from the side. "I said stay out of the way," Min-Soo shouted, pulling her up roughly. They pushed forward, but the Tarkaxian defense was too strong. Another cadet fell, then another. Min-Soo made a brave charge toward the flag, but a Tarkaxian warrior stepped out and shot him at close range. Min-Soo's suit vibrated. He was out. A loud buzzer sounded. The simulation was over. They had failed. The holograms disappeared. The room was just a room again. The cadet stood there tired and defeated. That was a disaster, Minsu said, pulling off his helmet. He glared at Jihai. If you could actually fight, we might have had a chance. Jihai did not respond. She was looking at the blank space where the Tarkaxian base had been. Her mind was not on the failure. It was on the movements. She had watched the Tarkaxian warriors carefully. She saw how they moved. They were powerful, but they were not graceful. Their armor had gaps at the joints, the knees, the elbows, the neck. Their helmets had a small vulnerable spot right where the neck met the skull. In her mind, she was not holding a plasma rifle. She was holding one of her knives. In her mind, she was not falling. She was dropping low under the Tarkaxian swing. In her mind, her hand moved in a short, sharp arc. The blade would slide perfectly into that gap in the armor. It would be over in a second. Are you even listening? Minsu snapped. We failed because of you. Instructor Park walked into the center of the room. His face was grim. Cadet Minsu is not entirely wrong. Your team's coordination was poor. Your fire was inaccurate. And Cadet Jihai, he said, turning to her. You were a liability. You failed to provide any meaningful support. Jihai finally looked away from the empty space. She met Park's eyes. Their armor has weaknesses, sir. At the joints. A direct energy weapon is inefficient. You have to hit the same spot multiple times to break through. Minsu laughed. Oh, great. The knife expert is giving us tactical advice. What should we do? Ask them to stand still while we try to hit their elbows. Park held up a hand to silence Minsu. He looked at Jihai with a curious expression. What is your point, Cadet? My point is, there are other ways, Jihai said quietly. The approved ways are the ones that work, Park replied, his tone final. The ways in the training manual. Your other ways are the reason you are at the bottom of this class. Dismissed. The cadets walked out of the simulation chamber. Minsu and the others walked ahead, talking loudly about what they should have done differently. Jihai walked behind them, alone and silent. She went back to her small room in the cadet barracks. It was neat and plain. The only personal thing was a small wooden box on her desk. She opened it. Inside on a soft cloth lay her 7 steel knives. Each one was a slightly different shape and size. She picked one up. It felt right in her hand. It felt like an extension of her own body. It was not heavy or clumsy like the plasma rifle. She thought about her grandmother. She remembered the small garden behind their old house on Earth. She remembered the cool morning air. Her grandmother moving slowly, showing her the steps. The quiet swish of the blade cutting through the air. It was not about stabbing or slashing wildly. It was about balance. It was about precision. It was about finding the path of least resistance and following it. They will tell you this knowledge is useless, her grandmother had said, her voice soft but strong. They will tell you to forget. But you must not. This is not just fighting. This is who we are. It is a promise from the past. Jihai put the knife back in the box and closed the lid. She looked at her reflection in the dark screen of her data pad. She saw a small young woman who everyone thought was weak. They saw the old knives and thought of a forgotten past. They did not understand. The past was not forgotten. It was just waiting, and soon it would no longer wait quietly. The air on the asteroid outpost was thin and cold. A constant low hum from the life support systems vibrated through the metal floors. This was Cadet Jihai's assigned post for the annual war games. It was the most boring location possible. A remote sensor station on a rock in the middle of nowhere. It was a place for cadets who were not expected to do anything important. Jihai stood at her post in a narrow corridor, wearing her standard-issue combat suit. Her job was to guard a simulated core reactor. It was just a glowing blue hologram in the middle of a room. No enemy would ever bother to come here. That's what everyone thought. Minsu was there too. He leaned against a wall looking annoyed. This is a waste of time, he grumbled. They put us out here because they don't think we can handle real combat. Because of you. He didn't look at Jihai when he said it. He just stared at the empty corridor. Jihai didn't answer. She was looking at the layout of the outpost. She noted the air vents, the dark spaces under the control panels, the narrow maintenance walkways above. Her mind was not on the war game. It was on the space itself, how to move through it, how to use it. A voice crackled over the comms. It was Instructor Park, back at the main academy command. All teams, the war games are now active. Remember, this is a test of your tactics and discipline. Good luck, Minsu sighed. Great, 12 hours of guarding a fake light. Let's get this over with. For the first hour, nothing happened. Reports came in over the comms from other, more important battle zones. Cadets were fighting in giant ship simulators and dense urban hologram cities. It all sounded very exciting. It all sounded very far away. Then the lights flickered. A low, different kind of rumble shook the floor. It was not the life support system. This was heavier, deeper. What was that? Minsu asked, standing up straight. A red light began to flash on the wall. An alarm sounded, but it was not the alarm for the war games. This was a different, more urgent sound. Instructor Park's voice burst over the comms, but it was filled with static. All cadets. Abort war games. We have a breach. Real-world incursion. Tarkaxian raiders, they are. Jammed communications. Defend your posts. The message cut out. Then there was only silence and the blaring alarm. Minsu's face went pale. Tarkaxians? Here for real? He gripped his plasma rifle tightly. This can't be happening. Jihai did not move. Her body became very still. Her eyes, however, were alive, scanning the corridor. The boring safe outpost was now a trap. And they were inside it. The sound of heavy, clanking footsteps echoed from the far end of the corridor. Then a Tarkaxian warrior appeared. He was bigger than the holograms. Much bigger. His scaly green skin was covered in thick metal armor. He held a large, buzzing energy weapon. His yellow eyes glowed from behind his helmet. He saw Minsu and Jihai and let out a deep guttural roar. Minsu reacted. He raised his plasma rifle and fired. The bright bolt of energy hit the Tarkaxian square in the chest. There was a flash of light. But when the light faded, the warrior was still standing. A shimmering blue energy field had appeared in front of him for a second. A personal shield, the Tarkaxian laughed, a nasty grating sound. He fired his own weapon. A blast of raw energy slammed into the wall next to Minsu, melting the metal. Minsu dove behind a control panel for cover. My rifle can't get through his shield, he yelled, his voice shaking with fear. Jihai was no longer standing where she had been. While Minsu was firing, she had moved. She had slipped silently into the shadows of a deep doorway. She was watching. Another Tarkaxian appeared behind the first, then a third. They were moving down the corridor, their heavy boots shaking the floor. They were not here for the war games. They were here for the outpost's real power source, the one the simulated reactor was meant to protect. Minsu fired again and again. His shots were absorbed by the shields. The Tarkaxians fired back, and the air filled with the smell of burned metal and ozone. Minsu's cover was being blown apart piece by piece. I'm overheating, he shouted. His plasma rifle was glowing orange. He had to stop firing or it would explode. One of the Tarkaxians saw his chance. He charged. He was fast for his size. He was upon Minsu in seconds. He knocked the glowing rifle from Minsu's hands. It clattered to the floor. The Tarkaxian raised a massive armored fist to crush Minsu. Minsu looked up helpless. He saw his own reflection in the Tarkaxian's helmet. He knew this was the end. Then something happened, a flicker of movement. A shadow detaching itself from the deeper shadows. It was Jihai. She did not run. She seemed to flow across the floor. She was low to the ground, her body a tight, controlled line. The Tarkaxian warrior was so focused on Minsu that he did not see her coming. She came up behind him. In her hand was one of her steel knives. It did not glow. It did not buzz. It was just a piece of sharp, cold metal. The Tarkaxian wore heavy armor, but where his helmet met the armor on his shoulders, there was a gap, a small, flexible seal to allow him to move his head. It was no bigger than 2 fingers wide. Jihai's arm moved in a short, precise arc. There was no wasted motion. It was not a wild stab. It was like a doctor giving an injection, quick, exact. The blade slid into the gap. The Tarkaxian froze. His whole body stiffened. A choked, gurgling sound came from his helmet. The glow in his yellow eyes flickered and went out. He stood perfectly still for a second, then crashed to the floor like a falling tree. The clang of his armor on the metal deck was deafening. He did not move again. Minsu stared, his mouth hanging open. He could not process what he had just seen. The giant warrior was down, killed by a single small knife. From the weak cadet, the other 2 Tarkaxians further down the corridor saw their comrade fall. They roared in anger and confusion. They had not seen what happened. They just saw him collapse. Jihai did not stay to fight them. She did not look at Minsu. She simply melted back into the darkness, disappearing into the maze of pipes and shadows. She was gone. The 2 remaining Tarkaxians advanced more carefully now. They fired their energy weapons wildly into the dark corners, lighting up the corridor with blasts of light. Min-Su scrambled for his plasma rifle. It was still hot, but it had cooled enough to hold. He crouched behind his ruined cover, his heart pounding in his chest. He kept looking at the dead Tarkaxian on the floor, at the knife handle sticking out of his neck. He had mocked those knives. He had laughed at her. Now one of them had just saved his life. One of the Tarkaxians moved forward to check on his fallen friend. As he bent down, another shadow fell over him. Ji-Hai dropped from a maintenance walkway above. She landed silently on the warrior's broad back. Her legs wrapped around his torso for a second for balance. Her other hand held a second knife. This one found a different gap, a small vulnerable spot at the top of the spine. Right under the back of the helmet. Another quick, precise motion. The second Tarkaxian let out a short cry and fell forward, his body slamming into the first one. The last Tarkaxian warrior saw her now. He saw the small human female standing between the two bodies of his squad. He saw the dark, simple knives in her hands. He fired his weapon. Ji-Hai was already moving. She did not run away. She ran toward him, but not in a straight line. She moved like water, flowing around the blasts of energy. She used the pipes on the walls to push off, changing direction in an instant. She was too fast, too unpredictable. The Tarkaxian kept firing, but he could not hit her. She was a ghost. She closed the distance. The Tarkaxian swung his large weapon at her like a club. She dropped onto her back and slid under the swing between his legs. As she passed underneath him, her knife flashed upward, cutting deep into the soft armor behind his knee. The Tarkaxian bellowed in pain and surprise. His leg gave way. He stumbled, crashing against the wall. Ji-Hai was on her feet in an instant. She did not finish him. She simply turned and ran down a side corridor, disappearing once more into the darkness. The wounded Tarkaxian tried to stand, but his leg would not hold him. He dragged himself backward, firing his weapon blindly down the corridor where she had vanished. The fear was clear in his eyes. He was not fighting a soldier. He was being hunted by a shadow. Min-Su saw his chance. He stood up, aimed his plasma rifle, and fired at the wounded Tarkaxian. The warrior's shield was down. The energy bolt hit him in the side, and he slumped over unconscious. Silence returned to the corridor. The only sounds were the alarm and Min-Su's heavy breathing. He stood surrounded by 3 defeated Tarkaxian raiders. 2 were dead. 1 was by his hand, but the other 2, they were by hers. He looked down the empty, dark corridor where Ji-Hai had disappeared. He was not angry anymore. He was not scornful. He was in awe, and he was a little afraid. The weak cadet was not weak. She was something else, something the galaxy had not seen in a long, long time, and she was still out there in the darkness of the outpost, her knives ready. The command center of the Astral Naval Academy was in chaos. Screens flickered with static and error messages. The Tarkaxian jamming signal was powerful, but it was not perfect. A few camera feeds from the asteroid outpost were still coming through. They were fuzzy and kept cutting out, but they were enough. Instructor Park stood in the middle of the room, his face a mask of cold tension. He watched the main screen. It showed the thermal and motion sensor data from the outpost. He saw the bright red blobs that were the Tarkaxian raiders. He saw the smaller, cooler blue dot that was Cadet Min-Su moving cautiously. And he saw her. Ji-Hai's signal was different. It was not a steady dot. It was a ghost. It would appear for a second as a faint blue smudge in one corridor, then vanish completely. A moment later, it would flicker into existence in a ventilation shaft 20 meters away. Then it was gone again. The advanced sensors could not lock onto her. She moved in a way that was almost invisible to technology. "Can you enhance that sector?" Park asked a technician, his voice tight. The technician typed frantically. "I'm trying, sir. Her biosignature is faint. She's controlling her breathing. Her body heat it's like she's not even there." Then a camera in the main corridor flickered to life for a few seconds. It showed the scene. 2 Tarkaxian warriors lay motionless on the floor. Min-Su was taking cover. And for a single breathtaking moment, the camera caught Ji-Hai in motion. She was not fighting like a Marine. There was no loud yelling. No wild charging. It was a brutal, silent dance. Her movements were fluid and precise. She used the Tarkaxian's own size and strength against him. When he swung his weapon, she was already moving inside his reach. Her arm moved in a short, efficient arc. The steel knife in her hand was just a flash. Then the giant warrior was falling, the feed cut out again. A stunned silence fell over the command center. The other officers and technicians had stopped what they were doing to watch. What was that? One of the junior officers whispered. Park did not answer. He could not look away from the now blank screen. His mind was racing, putting the pieces together. The old knives, her terrible scores with standard weapons, her calmness, her obsession with the other ways. He had thought it was stubbornness. He had thought it was a failure to adapt. He was wrong. This was not some random lucky skill. This was a complete and formal fighting system. It was an art, a terrifying one. It was designed for one purpose, to kill efficiently, silently, and without mercy. It ignored shields and heavy armor. It went straight for the weak points that every living thing has. A cold dread settled in Park's stomach. He had read about this in the old classified history files of humanity's first contact wars. There were stories, whispers. He turned to a secure terminal and typed in his command codes. He accessed the restricted historical database. He searched for the old terms, the words that were no longer spoken. He found it. The file was marked with a red symbol, a symbol that meant forbidden knowledge. The title of the file was Sulsa, the old word for the shadow warriors. The silent killers. On the screen, a description appeared. The Sulsa were specialized operatives trained in the art of silent infiltration and assassination. Their techniques, a fusion of ancient Earth's close-quarter combat styles, were deemed psychologically damaging and militarily destabilizing. The art focused on the rapid disablement of high-value targets through precision strikes to neurological and physiological weak points. Park's eyes widened as he read on. The file described the very movements he had just seen Ji-Hai perform. The way she moved like a ghost, the way she targeted the neck and the spine. It was all there. He looked back at the sensor screen. Ji-Hai's faint signal had appeared again, moving toward the outpost's power core. She was not just surviving, she was hunting. Meanwhile, far away on the bridge of the Tarkaxian raider ship, Commander Cathar was growing angry. His helmet feed, connected to his warriors on the outpost, was breaking up. But he had seen enough. He saw one of his best warriors fall to a small, blurry figure. He saw the way his soldier moved before he died, a sudden, jerking stiffness. It was not a death from a plasma burn or a sonic blast. It was something else, something more intimate and more frightening. One of his communications officers turned to him, his scales twitching with alarm. "Commander, we are receiving a priority message from High Command. They are monitoring the raid." "Why?" Cathar growled. "This is a simple grab and go. A milk run." "They intercepted the visual feed from Squad 2's helmets," the officer said, his voice nervous. "They have identified the combat style of the small human." Cathar leaned forward. "What style?" "They are just humans. They are weak." "The analysts say it is the forbidden forms, Commander. The ones from the Silent Tide." The words hung in the air. The bridge of the raider ship became very quiet. Even the youngest Tarkaxian crew member knew the stories. The Silent Tide was not a story of great battleships clashing. It was a ghost story, a story told to scare young warriors. It was a story about the early days of humanity's expansion, when humans had no powerful fleet, but they had soldiers who could walk through the best security systems. Soldiers who could end a war by making a planetary governor disappear from his own heavily guarded bed. They did not fight armies. They killed commanders. They created chaos and fear. They did it with knives. The 12 most powerful star systems at the time, including the Tarkaxian hegemony, had been so terrified of these shadows that they came together. They did not just defeat the humans in battle. They forced them to sign a treaty. The humans had to agree to erase the knowledge. They had to promise never to teach the forbidden forms again. Any world caught teaching the art would be bombed from orbit until it was glass. The humans, outnumbered and outgunned, had agreed. The Silent Tide vanished into history. Until now, a new message flashed on Cathar's screen. It was from the Tarkaxian High Command itself. The words were simple and urgent. The forbidden forms live. The practitioner must be captured alive at all costs. Their knowledge must be taken. Do not let the Silent Tide rise again. Cathar felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's air conditioning. This was no longer a simple raid for a power core. This had just become the most important mission of his life. He slammed a fist on his command chair. "All remaining units, Converge on the power core. The small human female is the primary target. I want her alive. Do not kill her. Capture her. Back in the Academy Command Center, Park was reading the same history. He saw the list of treaties, the 12 star systems that had banned the art. He understood now why Jihai's grandmother, or whoever taught her, had kept it a secret. Teaching this was a death sentence for entire worlds. He looked at the live feed. The Tarkaxian raiders were changing their tactics. They were no longer spreading out to secure the outpost. They were all pulling back, moving in a group toward the central power core. They were hunting Jihai and they wanted her alive. Park knew what that meant. If the Tarkaxians captured her, they would tear the knowledge from her mind. They would learn the secrets of the Sulsa, or they would simply kill her to ensure the art died with her. He turned to the communications officer. Is there any way to get a message through the jamming? Any way at all? The officer shook his head. No, sir. The jamming is too strong. We have lost all contact. The cadets are on their own. Park was a man of rules. He believed in the chain of command. He believed in the treaties that kept the fragile peace. But as he watched the ghostly blue signal of Cadet Jihai moving to confront the entire Tarkaxian raiding party, he knew the rules had changed. The old laws had just crashed into the present. He had scolded her for being weak. He had told her her ways were useless. Now her forbidden ways were the only thing standing between the Tarkaxians and a victory that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. The silent, deadly dance had begun again, and the whole galaxy was watching. The heart of the asteroid outpost was a vast, circular chamber. In the center stood the real power core, a massive cylinder of glowing metal and swirling energy. It hummed with a deep, powerful sound that vibrated in the bones. This was what the Tarkaxians had come for. Jihai stood with her back to the core. The bright light cast her long shadow across the metal floor. Min-Su stood a few feet away, his plasma rifle held tight. He was breathing hard. He kept glancing at her. The fear in his eyes was now mixed with a new feeling, a desperate hope. Across the chamber, the main doors hissed open. Commander Cathar walked in. He was bigger than the other warriors, his armor decorated with jagged red marks. 4 of his remaining soldiers flanked him, their weapons raised. But they did not fire immediately. Cathar's yellow eyes were fixed on Jihai. He ignored Min-Su completely. The little ghost. Cathar's voice was a low rumble from his helmet. He took a step forward, his heavy boots clanking. You move like a story we tell our young to scare them, a story we thought was dead. Jihai did not answer. She held a knife in each hand. They looked like toys compared to the Tarkaxians' massive weapons. But the way she held them was not playful. It was calm and ready. Your art was erased, Cathar continued, circling slowly to the left. His soldiers spread out, trying to surround them. It was banned for a reason. It is a coward's art, hiding in shadows, striking from behind. Min-Su aimed his rifle. Stay back! One of the Tarkaxian soldiers fired a warning shot near Min-Su's feet. The floor melted. Min-Su flinched but held his ground. The child with the loud toy is not important, Cathar said, still looking only at Jihai. It is you I want. You are coming with me. Your knowledge will be a gift for my people. It is not a gift, Jihai said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried in the large room. It is a burden. Cathar let out a sharp, grating laugh. A burden? A way to kill so effectively? A way to make the strong and weak equal on the battlefield? That is power. He stopped circling. He was now directly in front of her. He gestured with one large armored hand. The 12 great systems made a law. They said no one could use your tricks. They were too dangerous, too disruptive. They made kings afraid to sleep in their own palaces. Jihai shifted her weight slightly. Her eyes never left Cathar. You are wrong, she said. It was not banned because it was a trick. It was not banned because it was a coward's art. She took a small, smooth step forward. It was banned because it made kings and commanders equal to a single girl with a knife. Her words hung in the air. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the power core. Cathar roared in anger. He had expected fear. He had expected her to surrender. He had not expected this calm truth. He charged. He was fast and powerful, a living battering ram. He did not bother with his energy weapon. He wanted to crush her with his own hands. Jihai did not try to meet his charge. She flowed to the side. It was like watching a leaf avoid a falling rock. Cathar thundered past her, his fist smashing into the floor where she had been standing. The metal dented under the blow. He spun around, swinging a backhanded blow. Jihai dropped into a low crouch. The air whistled as his arm passed over her head. Min-Su saw his chance. He fired his plasma rifle at one of the other soldiers who was moving to help his commander. The fight was on. The chamber erupted into chaos. Energy bolts flew. Min-Su ducked and weaved, firing from behind a console. He was fighting for his life, but he was also fighting to protect Jihai's back. He understood his role now. He was the distraction. She was the weapon. Cathar was relentless. He kept attacking, his movements strong and direct. But Jihai was like water. She was never where he expected. She used his own momentum, guiding his attacks past her, making him stumble. Her knives flickered out, not to kill, but to test. They scratched at the joints of his armor, looking for a way in. "Stand still," he bellowed, getting frustrated. He lunged again, this time grabbing a loose pipe from the wall. He swung it like a club. Jihai had to leap backward to avoid it. The pipe smashed into the power core's housing with a shower of sparks. The room lights flickered. Cathar smiled behind his helmet. He had found a way to limit her movement. He began swinging the pipe wildly, not aiming for her, but for the area around her. He was destroying the floor, the walls, the consoles. He was creating a wreckage field to trap her. Jihai was forced to retreat, her steps becoming less sure on the damaged floor. One of his swings came too close. She blocked the pipe with her two knives crossed in an X. The force of the blow was immense. It sent a shock up her arms and she cried out, stumbling back. One of her knives was knocked from her hand. It skittered across the floor and into the darkness. Cathar saw his opening. He dropped the pipe and charged again, his arms wide to grab her. Jihai was off balance. She had only one knife left. Min-Su saw what was happening. He yelled and fired his rifle at Cathar's back. The blast hit the commander's personal shield, which flared bright blue. It didn't hurt Cathar, but it distracted him for a split second. That was all Jihai needed. As Cathar's hands closed around her, she did not try to pull away. She let herself fall forward, right into his grasp. It was the last thing he expected. As she fell, her free hand grabbed onto a cable hanging from the ceiling, torn loose in the fight. She used her momentum to swing her legs up. She wrapped her legs around Cathar's thick neck for a moment, using all her body weight to twist. Cathar, caught by surprise, was pulled off balance. He staggered, his grip on her loosening. In that moment, as she hung upside down in front of him, Jihai struck with her last knife. She did not aim for his chest or his face. She aimed for the command harness on his armor. It was a small, glowing unit on his left shoulder, covered by a thin layer of clear armor. It controlled his shields, his communications, his suit's power. The point of her steel knife was small and hard. It hit the center of the clear armor. The material was strong, but it was designed to stop energy blasts, not a focused physical impact from a forged point. The clear cover cracked, a spider web of lines appeared. Then with a sharp pop it shattered. The knife blade dug into the delicate electronics beneath. Sparks erupted from Cathar's shoulder. The blue glow of his personal shield flickered and died. The lights on his helmet went dark. A pained grunt escaped him as a feedback surge shocked his system. He dropped Jihai and stumbled backward, clutching his smoking shoulder. He was now just a big, armored man. His technology had failed him. Jihai landed on her feet. She stood panting, holding her one remaining knife. Her body ached from the force of the blow. Her arms felt heavy. Cathar looked at her. The anger was gone from his eyes. It was replaced by a raw, primal fear. Was helpless before this small human and her simple, forbidden knowledge. He turned and made a sharp cutting motion with his good hand to his remaining soldiers. "Fall back to the ship, now!" The Tarkaxians did not hesitate. They grabbed their wounded commander and ran, retreating back down the corridor they had come from. The sound of their running footsteps faded quickly. Silence returned to the power core chamber, broken only by the sputtering of broken electronics and Min Su's ragged breathing. He walked over to Ji-Hai, his rifle hanging loosely in his hand. He looked at the broken harness on the floor. He looked at the single knife in her hand. He looked at the girl who had faced down a Tarkaxian commander and won. He didn't know what to say. Thank you did not seem like enough. Ji-Hai slowly straightened up. She walked over to where her other knife had fallen and picked it up. She wiped the blade clean on her pant leg and slipped both knives back into their sheaths, hidden under her uniform. She looked at Min Su and gave a small, tired nod. It was over, for now. The silence after the battle did not last long. The hum of the Tarkaxian jamming signal faded, replaced by the frantic chatter of Academy communications. The main lights in the outpost flickered back to full strength, chasing away the shadows Ji-Hai had used so well. Within minutes, the sound of shuttle engines roared outside. The doors to the power core chamber hissed open and a squad of armored Academy Marines rushed in, their weapons raised. They fanned out, but there was nothing left to fight. They found only the signs of the struggle, scorch marks, dented metal, and two cadets standing in the middle of it all. Min Su was leaning against a console, exhausted. Ji-Hai stood straight, her hands at her sides, her face calm. She looked like any other cadet, except for the quiet intensity in her eyes. The Marine sergeant approached them. His helmet retracted. He looked from Min Su to Ji-Hai, his eyes lingering on the small, still figure. The area is secure. Are either of you injured? We're fine, Min Su said, his voice hoarse. The sergeant nodded, his gaze sweeping over the room again. He had seen the bodies of the Tarkaxians in the corridor. He had seen the precise, brutal wounds. He looked back at Ji-Hai. He did not say anything, but his expression was one of deep respect and a little fear. They were taken back to the main Academy campus on Mars. The return trip was a blur. Medics checked them. Officers asked them questions. Ji-Hai answered in short, simple sentences. Min Su did most of the talking, his story tumbling out in an excited rush. He told them about the raid, about the Tarkaxians, and about Ji-Hai. He did not call her weak. He called her incredible. A day later, Instructor Park stood in a large, quiet room. It was the main briefing room for United Earth Command. The walls were screens showing star maps and fleet positions. Sitting around a large circular table were the most important admirals and generals in the human fleet. Their faces were serious. Park stood at the front of the room. He felt their eyes on him. Admirals, generals, he began, his voice formal. You have all read the after-action report from the incident at Outpost Theta. You have seen the sensor logs and the camera fragments. He pressed a button on a small remote. The main screen behind him lit up. It showed the fuzzy, broken footage from the outpost corridor. It showed Ji-Hai moving like a ghost. It showed the Tarkaxian warriors falling one after another. The room was utterly silent as the admirals watched the silent, deadly dance. When the video ended, Park turned to face them. For generations, he said, his voice growing stronger, we have tried to catch up. We have built bigger ships. We have developed better shields and more powerful weapons. We have tried to match the technology of the older, more advanced species, and we have always been one step behind. He paused, letting his words sink in. We believed that our history, our old ways of war, were a weakness. We were told to forget them. We signed treaties that called our own knowledge forbidden. We agreed that the art of the Sulsa was too terrible to use. He pointed at the frozen image on the screen. It showed Ji-Hai, a small figure against the giant Tarkaxian. But we were wrong. We did not understand why it was truly forbidden. It was not forbidden because it was weak. It was forbidden because it was the great equalizer. It does not care about the size of your ship. It does not care about the power of your shield. It only cares about skill, and precision, and will. He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each leader. That cadet, with her simple knives, defended an outpost against a Tarkaxian raiding party. She did what an entire platoon of Marines with plasma rifles might have failed to do. She used the knowledge we were told to throw away. He placed his hands flat on the table. For too long we have fought their way. It is time we remembered our own. It is time we stopped being ashamed of our past. It is time for the silent tide to rise again. He did not say anything more. He did not need to. The image on the screen said everything. A week later, things had changed. HFY was no longer just a cadet. She was given a new room. It was not bigger, but it was private. No one mocked her in the halls anymore. When she walked by, other cadets would stop and watch her. Their looks were not of scorn, but of awe and curiosity. She was called to a new training ground. It was a quiet room with soft mats on the floor. It was not for loud, explosive drills. It was for quiet, focused practice. Standing in the room were 20 new cadets. They were young, their faces eager and nervous. They watched her as she entered. Instructor Park was there too. He stood off to the side. He nodded to her. "These cadets have been selected," he said. "They have been chosen for their agility, their patience, and their mind. They are your first students." HFY looked at the young faces. They were looking to her for guidance, for knowledge. She walked to the center of the room. She was not wearing her standard combat suit. She wore simple dark clothes that allowed her to move freely. She took out one of her knives. It gleamed under the soft light. She did not give a big speech. She did not tell them they were going to learn a forbidden art. She simply began. She moved through the first form. It was a slow, flowing sequence of steps and turns. Her arm moved, the knife cutting through the air without a sound. It was not an attack. It was a meditation. It was about balance. It was about understanding the body and the blade. The cadets watched, mesmerized. They tried to copy her movements. They were clumsy at first. Their steps were heavy. Their arms were stiff. HFY moved among them. She did not speak often. She would gently adjust a cadet's elbow. She would tap a foot to show a better position. Her touch was light, but her corrections were exact. "Your body is the weapon," she said softly to one cadet who was trying too hard to force the movement. "The knife is just the point. The power comes from here." She placed a hand on the cadet's stomach. "From your center, not from your arm." The cadet nodded, understanding dawning on her face. HFY continued to teach. She showed them how to stand, how to breathe, how to see the world not as a collection of solid objects, but as a series of spaces and pathways. She was not just teaching them to fight. She was teaching them a new way to see. Instructor Park watched from the side. He saw the concentration on the young cadets' faces. He saw the way they moved, already starting to change, becoming quieter, more controlled. He saw HFY no longer the quiet failing student, but a master of her art, a teacher. She was calm. She was patient. And in her eyes he saw the same quiet determination he had seen in the outpost. The determination to protect. The determination to remember. The art that had been buried for so long was no longer a secret. It was a seed. And in this quiet room, with these 20 young students, it was beginning to grow. The future was no longer about catching up. It was about remembering who they were. And the galaxy would soon learn that humanity's greatest strength was not its technology. It was its silence.